choice that they need to make, I truly and firmly believe this, is to not make decisions based in fear. And I think that fear is the biggest enemy, if you want to say it, in business today. And fear wears many masks. It wears the mask of bad decisions. It wears the mask of stress, of micromanagement, of greed, of ego, you could just make a list from here to the moon. It wears many masks, but at the root of all of it, when you really think about it, and I do this work now where I'm speaking all over the world about handling the fear in our organizations, because fear is what keeps us from being freedom-centered and democratic. But we have to uncover that fear. And I think the reason why we get that us-them mentality, or we see the whining and the complaining, it's because ultimately people don't step into their power and self-govern and make the tough choices because of fear. And I like to talk about something that I call the power question. Basically, this idea of uncovering the fear that is underneath our decisions, shining a light on it, and really asking ourselves, what decisions would we make? What would we do if we weren't afraid, if that fear weren't there? And it's been incredible doing this, asking these questions to executives all over the world. I have seen breakthrough after breakthrough. I've seen people's lives completely transformed. I just got a call from a CEO about 2 weeks ago who told me that in working with this idea of identifying the fear at every decision-making point and then choosing to make their decision based in freedom and possibility rather than fear, they've grown a whole new division of their company from 0 to 175 million in just 2 years. So I think if we can notice the way that fear causes us to either not take action or to make silly and short-sighted decisions, that would be probably the biggest revolution that we could have in business. It really relates to everyone. We have to see the fearlessness at every level, in every dimension of the organization. And I think the challenge is people are afraid of having courage, and they're afraid of being fearless because we have such punitive cultures in most organizations. And so we have to develop ways that we have to create systems and processes, basically, that help us have the courage to choose to make decisions from a more freedom-centered rather than fear-based mindset for everyone. One of my favorite examples of this is there's a really cool company in Brighton in the UK called Nixon McKenna's, and they have a best practice that they call the Church of Fail. And about once a month or so, they get everyone together in their small company, about 20 people, and they line up the chairs in the boardroom like pews of a church, and one by one people can get up and quote-unquote confess their failures. And by doing this, it airs it out in the open, everyone cheers and claps for you, it creates a learning environment rather than a fear-based punitive environment. And it's a little thing, but it helps to chip away at the fear that is so prevalent in workplaces, whether it's fear of being liked or not liked, fear of, will I keep my job or not, fear of, success, fear of failure, fear of any number of things. So it has to be every single person doing this. We've just launched a global leadership program called the Worldview Freedom Center Leader Program, and we built it on a gamification platform. And the entire program takes 2 to 3 years to complete, and it's meant to be a transformational journey to wake people up to the way that fear tries to control them and have them make their decisions from a much more freedom-centered standpoint. I think these ideas are universal. They don't just apply to the workplace, but it does require the long view. It requires perseverance. It requires, I I think one of the big things is an individual has to be okay with not always being liked by everyone. I think we all want to feel liked, and sometimes that causes us to either not make the choices we need to make or make bad choices. And I also think there's a correlation with self-worth. In my experience, I found that when an individual has low self-worth, sometimes it's a little bit harder for them to make courageous, long-term view type decisions. And when an individual has higher self-worth, that deep and abiding sense of one's value, that is not extrinsically derived, but is intrinsic to who they are. I think that higher self-worth individual is able to more easily, let's say, take that long-term view and persevere. The first tip would be to know what your purpose is and make sure that the choices that you're making, to the degree that it's possible, are purpose aligned, because then you'll have that deeper foundation to stand on. And that's at an individual level, but I think it can play out organizationally or in parenting or just in life. And the second tip would be to start with purpose. The second tip would be when it comes to making a tough choice, just ask yourself, if I weren't afraid of the outcome, what would I do here? And the third thing I would say, kind of building off of that second point, would be the world or worldly thinking can mess with your head, but it can't mess with your heart or your gut. So you want to trust your deep intuition, your heart, your gut. And what I've seen in my experience is I might have the most rational plan that's well thought out, logical, backed up by great numbers and statistics. And if I make my decision based on that and it's not, intuition aligned or heart aligned or gut aligned, 100% of the time it ends up being the wrong decision. And so I think if you don't know what your intuition does say on that decision, then you need to carve out some time to step away from the eye addictions, iPhone, iPad, whatever. Step away from the noise. Go for a nice long walk and be in some stillness and listen to what your intuition is saying, and trust that and have that courage. Because every time we put off making the courageous decisions that we need to make, I don't think the universe gives us a free pass. I think inevitably we have to learn, each and every one of us, how to make those tough choices. And, the universe has us by the scruff of the neck and won't let us go until we step into our power and do that.
Au revoir.